Hi, my name is Kate Phillips. I'm the librarian here at the Vermont Historical Society. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the collection of Ellen Agnes Riley, who was the head housekeeper at the Coolidge White House. Ellen Agnes Riley, who is known as Ella to her friends and family, was born in 1884 in Raleigh, Massachusetts. She studied in Boston at the Women's Educational and Industrial Union, where she trained to be a dietitian. And she worked for some time after finishing school for the Stearns department store. Mr. Stearns was a good friend of Calvin Coolidge. And when he heard that he was in need of a new head housekeeper, he recommended Ms. Riley for that position. The housekeeper at the White House is the person who essentially makes sure that all the nuts and bolts of daily life in the White House are functioning. She worked closely with Grace Coolidge, the First Lady, to plan all of the menus for White House events for the Coolidge family in general. She managed all of the household staff. She did all of the grocery shopping for the White House, her family and the staff. So there was a great amount of newspaper coverage when Ms. Riley took this new post on, because this wasn't a position that had changed hands many times. And in one of the articles, they talk about the fact that the White House housekeeper is charged with maintaining the colonial simplicity established by George Washington for the household. And I find this really interesting because we're in the 1920s. This is a moment of what we call the colonial revival, renewed interest in a supposed colonial aesthetic, this sort of myth of a practical founding father that establishes our democratic values. They also, in the same article, talk about how one of her greatest responsibilities is service without undemocratic ostentation, which is also interesting in contrast to the coverage of state dinners at the time, which were served on the gold flatware purchased by President Monroe in France. And so they were quite ostentatious events. And we know from Ms. Riley's papers what were served at those events. We have, as part of the collection, Ms. Riley's menu book, an account book, where she outlines what is being served at different dinners. Here is the menu for dinner for the Queen of Romania, where she serves both caviar on toast, something called fairy toast, and cold turkey in aspic. I really like this book, especially as somebody who was originally from Washington, D.C. It's really fun to see her going out on the town and purchasing ingredients from local markets, many of which still exist today. Another thing I really love about this collection is that it's an opportunity to see the sort of behind the scenes at the White House. It's an opportunity to get to know the people who actually made the place run. We have in the collection lots of photographs of the White House staff, all of whom are named. These are people who often go completely unrecognized in history. We have notes passed between Grace Coolidge, who was the official head of household, things like this fantastic note that says, "Did you ever eat a green salad with tiny bits of fried bacon scattered over it just before serving an oil dressing? Rather nice, GC." There's also an enormous amount of correspondence that really tells a great detailed story about life in the White House. Ms. Riley wrote to her mother regularly in great detail about her experience there, but she especially focuses on her experience with the White House pets. One of the best known facts about the Coolidge family is how many pets they had, ranging from Rebecca the raccoon to Rob Roy and Calamity Jane the collies. There was also Prudence Prim, a collie who was often dressed up as a flapper and brought out at garden parties for soldiers that took place regularly at the White House. And a lot of those stories come from these letters of Ellen Agnes Riley to her mother. She and her mother were both clearly animal lovers as well, and she seemed to have really relished telling these stories. So it's a lot of fun to look at. Thank you so much for joining me. To learn more about us at the Vermont Historical Society, check out our website and follow us on social media.